Okay.
Are they all right?
Okay. Now, you know, this type of thinking will actually destroy science. Why? Oh, there's so many different ways of interpreting the phenomena, therefore the phenomena doesn't exist.
Science doesn't get involved with it.
No, but I'm saying your conceptual thinking doesn't make sense. Because if you're saying, oh my God, they have so many different conceptions of God, therefore it doesn't make sense, we could apply the same to science and say there's so many different conceptions of phenomena.
Science is demonstrable. Science is about our natural world. Let the theists argue which God is better, which God is real.
What I'm trying to say is that your way of thinking that there's many different views on God, therefore it doesn't make sense. I'm saying that line of thinking is not logical.
But does it make sense?
What does make sense?
If it doesn't, I'm saying it doesn't make sense. Are you saying it makes sense?
What makes sense to me is that many different people throughout history have tried to come up with conceptions of God, but that doesn't mean for me necessarily there is no God, just because there's many different views. That makes no sense. This is a very famous argument of Ricky Gervais and these types of people. The fact is, it doesn't make any sense. It's not a logical argument at all. Now let's get back to this point. Science has this paradigm, has this way of looking at the world, which is that for natural effects, we're going to look for natural causes. Okay? Now, Muslims have no problem with that. Christians have no problem with that.
Now they don't. Back in the day, they used to have.
That's not true. I'll give you evidence.
Dark Ages, hello.
Look, Damien, you should know this, right? We can't take the European experience and superimpose it on the world.
I'm not saying. I'm talking about the Christian.
Sure.
That's what I said. Maybe in the Islamic countries.
But I also explained it's more nuanced with the Christian world than what you're saying. It's more nuanced. Because even if Christian Europe was actually atheistic, if they accepted those Hellenistic ideas about reconfirming theories, they would have fallen into the same trap. It wasn't necessarily about Christianity. Anyway, what's very important to keep in mind is this. At the moment, there is absolutely nothing in the scientific domain that says anything against the existence of God. This is a common misconception.
Yeah, but it doesn't say anything for God either.
Okay, but what does that show you? It's neutral. Now it's for me or for you to argue.
That's right, you are.
Okay,
right.
Yeah.
Science is not. It's not taking a position.
Yes, fine, good. We agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, therefore, what you said earlier, when I explained to you about the design of the brain, you said evolution. That answer doesn't make sense. It's like me asking you, do you like stamp collecting? And you say you live in North Luton.
It doesn't make sense to you.
No, it doesn't make sense as a answer because...
Biologist?
No, but I studied philosophy of biology.
Well, I went to school as well. I had a bit of biology, I've done my A-levels.
No, but listen, where does it say?
It's like when if I'm going to argue about Islam, you'll say.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say.
Oh, but you're not a scholar, so
I hope you agree with me.
You can't.
You do.
You can't tell me because are you a scholar? No,
I'm not saying that, Damien. I'm not saying. No, Damien, I'm not saying that.
You are, but
no, you're a smart individual. I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is that biology can be used by theists and atheists, but now they need to come up with arguments which are non-scientific, which are philosophical.
Why?
Because science, like you said, is neutral.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you see? That's what's going on here. So what I would do, let's agree science is neutral. Now you're going to use science to show your argument for atheism. I'm going to use science to show my argument for theism. Okay? So I'm going to come up with an argument, and you tell me whether you think it makes any sense.
But it's not about. It doesn't matter if I'm theist or atheist. It doesn't matter.
What do you mean?
Science shows us science helps us understand the natural world. That's all it is. It's a tool. It's a tool.
Yeah. So it's neither. Science is neither. Yeah. So science in of itself intrinsically is neither atheistic nor theistic unless we can show using a non-scientific argument that it's actually theistic or atheistic.
You can try, yeah.
Okay, so let me explain to you. So, science shows us that we have to apply our rationality to nature in a methodological way to come up with theories. That's how we do. So science is basically the application of reason to the natural world. Okay? So, how can a human being trust their mind and trust that their mind can unlock the mysteries of the universe and it can come up with concepts which are true if the human mind is a product of a random evolutionary process without divine intervention? What reason would we have to trust our mind? What reason would we have to do science? What reason would we have to even believe that truth is valuable? Science needs a moral anchor and it needs values for it to flourish, and theism provides both the conceptual framework for science to work and the moral framework within which it can flourish. However, atheism doesn't do that, and that's why historically it makes sense that theists were at the forefront of science.
That theism was in the forefront of science?
Yeah.
I think you should ask Suboor to repeat what you just said though, because I don't think it quite makes sense.
The theme is that...
How do you mean?
You said that just repeat what you said.
Atheism cannot provide the moral anchor and nor the conceptual framework for science to flourish.
But you said that theism could. You explained why theism...
So?
You said theism could.
Theism can. Because we believe God has given us a mind. We believe our mind is trustworthy. We believe in morals come from God. For example, truth...
That's tautological. So you say, okay.
Why are you squeezing? What's it got to do with morals? What science got to do with morals?
Okay, so I'll explain what science has to do with morals.
I don't understand why you're putting that into
Sure.
tool that we use to understand the natural world.
Sure.
I don't understand.
Now, why do we want to understand the natural world? What's the reason behind it? Like, for example, coronavirus, why are we looking for a cure?
Why do you asking me a question? Why we want to understand the natural world?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And for example, right now,
I think that's a silly question.
why?
Because why would you want? It's a silly question.
Why?
Everything we know, you're recording because of science. You're talking on the phone with your family because of science.
Sure.
Why were you asking that question?
I'm asking the question because there's certain things that we take as granted, but it's nice now and again.
Now because you're used to this technology, but it had to have a beginning. It had to have someone, Edison, the telephone, or
Okay,
the light
wait.
bulb, or whoever, you know.
Why is it wrong to question these beliefs? Like, we believe it's good to actually look for a cure for coronavirus. We believe it's good to do medicine. We believe it's good to understand the world. But my question to you is, why? Like, what is the reason behind that?
Why we believe? You ask me why say that again.
Okay, let me put it in simple terms. We want to, let's look at a concrete example. We want to be able to come up with vaccinations which are going to be effective against coronavirus. Okay? For instance, okay? What's the purpose behind this?
What's the purpose of?
This looking for vaccines. Or anything else with medicine. Looking for cancer research. What's the purpose behind it?
To cure the problem.
Cure. Help people.
To help people
reduce suffering. Okay. And that... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So reducing suffering is a moral virtue.
Okay, well, in that perspective...
So do you see why science needs morality? Do you see why?
So what?
Why is that a moral value?
Why? Reducing suffering.
Why would you use the word moral?
Okay, the reason why it's moral is because we believe it is good to save lives and it is bad that people are dying.
What about if...
That's not a definition of morality, though.
What about...
Oh, the definition of morality.
Well, you're saying why are you using the word moral?
Yeah.
Because it's good that lives are saved. That's why it's a moral issue.
What about if you...
No. You could just say that's a kind of philosophical choice. You could say that's a moral, but I'm asking why the word specifically moral?
Because good and bad are involved. If good and bad are involved, it's moral. And I believe with cancer research or anything in medicine, it's good and bad.
So what would
Science,
you
like for example, Nazis use science for bad purposes.
Is
correct?
death bad and life good?
In relative terms, yes.
In relative terms?
Yes.
So that makes it moral. But actually, of course, we need death, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
What about if you replace?
You're a very clever guy.
What about if you replace moral, the word moral, with well-being? It's about our well-being.
Yeah, again, that's a moral issue. Basically, what I was trying to
You're
get
calling
to,
it moral. Why if you replace that moral with well-being?
it
Don't
doesn't.
use the concept moral. It's
Yeah.
about well-being. We all want to be well, right?
No, but
Would you prefer life
yeah, but
over death?
that's again a moral virtue.
It's an empathy. That's a moral virtue, but it's not necessarily imperative. It's a
Good. I agree. It's not moral imperative yet, but we can show why moral imperatives exist. Okay. So
Would you prefer life over death, right?
yes.
Yes. Would you prefer to be healthy than sick?
Yeah.
So it's about well-being, right?
Yeah.
That's science about making our life better, easier.
Yeah. Okay.
People are doing it for humanity.
Okay. But well-being is basically a veneer behind which you have moral anchorage.
Yeah, but morals,
We believe in good. Look, let me ask you.
scriptures have different morals,
Okay.
right?
Let me put it in a different way, Damien. Look.
Is scripture moral? Is
It can
everything
be.
in your scripture moral?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
You're gonna
Because
shoot
based
yourself in
on
the foot.
based on my definition of morality, yeah. Now, do you believe the Nazis use science for immoral purposes?
Yes.
Okay. Conversely,
That doesn't mean
no,
science is bad.
no. I'm not saying science is bad. I'm saying conversely.
Can people use religion for bad?
Yes, they
things?
can.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the Nazis use science for an immoral purpose.
Yeah.
Therefore, science can also be used for a moral purpose, and it shows that science does have morality behind it. Even the concept of truth. You believe in truth. I believe in
science itself.
Yes, it does.
It's humans using this tool. This. It's not a science. Doesn't. It's not. It hasn't got morality in it. Science is a tool, right?
For science to
you can
flourish.
Use that tool for various.
No, but
you can take a knife. You can cut your bread and meat, or you can go stab someone,
okay.
right?
Look, for science to flourish,
That's got no morality in it, right?
look. For science to flourish, it has to have a moral anchorage. Like for example, if you look at the earliest proto-scientists, they were about saving lives.
Necessarily into science. It's about you're injecting this moral framework.
Do you not see it?
Which is unnecessary, really.
It's not unnecessary because even for example, let me
God agent into
no,
this
but
equation.
Damien, let me ask you. Damien, let me ask you a question. So, is it better to believe in something that's true than to believe something that's false?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good. So, science is there to try and come to the best explanation of the world, and that is better than coming up with random hypotheses. Do you agree?
This is what religion does.
Okay.
This is what religion does.
Okay, but that's a distraction. Okay.
That's a truth. That's a fact, right?
Look, okay. So, the beliefs which are true, we hold them to be dearer than beliefs which are false.
Absolutely.
Correct. And if somebody has the choice of a true belief and a false belief, it's better for them to go for the true belief than the false belief.
That's right, but not everyone does it.
No, that's fine. Okay.
It's not.
So that means
fine.
that means
That's the problem.
Okay, Damien, I'm just getting to my point. That means truth is good.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
That means for scientists to understand the world, to understand what is true, they believe in a concept. They believe in a conception of the good. Do you understand? We believe truth is good.
Again, you are injecting that moral thing into.
It's there.
Why are you doing this?
You want to use ethics instead?
But ethics wouldn't exist without some form of morality.
No, but it's the same meaning, really.
No, but what I was trying...
Morality and ethics is I've just kind of looked up the definitions. It's pretty much the same. But why use it? I think moral...
But do you know why...
Ethics has that more of a human vibe, hasn't it? And morality has more of a religious vibe.
It does have it. It's a concept.
Not necessarily. I mean,
But you're right.
say for example, virtue ethics of Aristotle.
It's a code of conduct
remember-
based on
Moral.
choice choice between rights,
Yeah.
good and
So,
bad.
so
right?
let's look into a first thing, yeah? Firstly, for morality,
Is morality subjective or objective?
we believe it's objective, yeah? For morality to exist,
interpretation,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So morality to, for society to be moral, it has to believe in, or morality exists outside of us. Number two, it has to believe that,
Hang on. How do you know that?
okay.
Demonstrate that morality as a concept.
Sure. Yeah. You know already. So, if morality is,
That's an if. I'm not interested in
You
if.
you did.
By the way,
say
you know
it has
all-
To, no, you did say it has to be.
No,
from
but Damien-
outside.
Again,
you said it has to be from outside. Why does it have to be?
Yeah, sure.
Outside? It's an assumption.
sure, I'm going to answer that, but first, yeah. The reason why I say if is because as a thinker, you always have to come up with conditionals and antecedents and these types
But
of
it's
things.
again,
You just
it's
have
an
to.
if. It's an if. If something.
Yeah, but that all of science and
We don't
philosophy
know
and
that, you don't know that.
look, all of science and philosophy is based upon ifs and hypotheses and these types of things to be able to test. Okay. Now, you said, why does it have to be something outside of us? Okay. If it is something not outside of us, then it will be purely subjective. So, for example,
Can I say that you could have two different societies with moral conduct but different definitions about what's good or bad.
That's why it's subjective, not objective.
It's still morals and it's still a decision of good and bad. It's still ethics. But what you're saying is that to have a unified agreement between those different societies would need something outside of us.
Yeah,
Is what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Because
And-
otherwise it's not objective.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So here's three options that people usually give when it comes to, they don't want to believe in God being the moral anchor, so they'll come up with three types of things. They'll say it's either due to society. It's society, culture, which tells us what is right, what is wrong. Number two, they'll say is biology. They'll say the way that we evolved, our natural dispositions. Or the third is, they'll just say it is what it is. They'll say essentially the position of moral realism. Morality just is, okay? Now, the problem with the first one is if we existed in the Dark Ages and there was all types of things where, you know, there's a woman who's been, it's been claimed she's a witch, and, you know, if she drowns, then she's innocent or something like this. You know, they had all types of things, exactly. But you get my point. So if all of society believed that was fine, then we would say, if we believed in subjectivity and this type of cultural relativism, we would say, yeah, it's fine. But of course, that's absurd. Second one is biology. The problem with biology is, well, if we look into human nature and a purely naturalistic understanding, then our morals, just like the fact that we have 5 fingers rather than 4, is just as arbitrary as what we believe rape to be wrong and having consensual sex in marriage and these types of things is good. All of these types of things would be purely subjective to the evolutionary processes. So that's why we can't have biology either. So realism is, okay, you have to justify it. Okay, why is it real? Now, without objective morality, we're going to have the problem, John, we're going to have the problem that you highlighted, which is two societies have two different sets of morals and there's no way of adjudicating between them. But the reason why, Damien, this conversation started is because I was trying to show science needs a moral anchorage, a moral underlying reinforcement, or without it, you basically have nothing. You have no imperative to do science. You have no reason to do science.
What's wrong? Why would you think that? So science is to improve our well-being, to improve our way of life.
Which is a moral issue.
You are making it a moral issue.
No, it is a moral
I
issue.
don't see it that way. Why? Technology is you know, you can use technology for good and bad. I mean, it's just technology.
But to develop technology, you would need to have an understanding of the world. Okay? And you would need to believe that the understanding of the world is better than a misunderstanding of the world.
Not believe. You need to demonstrate that it is. There's no belief.
Knowledge is better than ignorance.
Yes. So, Hence why we believe we would have essentially.
Necessarily, that would be the good and bad. Knowledge is good, ignorance is bad.
Exactly. Which is a moral issue. In a way. We've had some concession. Okay, that's good. Look, the reason why this conversation essentially started, we're talking about God. We're talking about design. Now, for me as a believer, there's a part of your brain that if you have toxins in your blood, your brain does this blood test, and if it realizes there's this toxin, it could be poison, it could be whatever, you actually throw up. So your brain is there to help you save your life, essentially, right? And there's many very interesting parts of human development. Just look at the way that if you get a cut, and the way that, so we would say it's design, right? And I want to know from an atheist, why is it not designed?
Because it comes from evolution. That's the best.
No, but again,
that we can demonstrate.
No, but you already agreed with me.
Demonstrate anything.
No, but you look. Okay, for example,
can you demonstrate to us that God exists?
Okay, look.
Can you demonstrate?
I just used an argument for God's existence, which is a design argument.
Can you demonstrate that God exists? And if you can, is your God better than a Jewish God?
I can give you rational reasons why there is a God. If you mean by demonstration, like a test tube, some sort of test, and to show.
I don't know. You'd have to come up with it. What method is that? It's the onus is on you. You are claiming that a God exists.
No, the onus is on the person who is. No. The onus is on the person who is making the counterintuitive claim. Because what you're saying, you
are making a claim that God exists. Demonstrate to an atheist is someone who doesn't believe in a God. That's
okay,
it.
Sure. So
I'm not saying that God doesn't exist.
we're looking at. You did say that earlier.
I don't believe in a concept of God.
Okay.
I never said I'm 100% sure that God exists. That a God doesn't exist.
By the way, that's usually.
There are atheists
who say that.
And atheists in general don't believe in a concept of God. That's it. You come to me talking about God. It's the onus is on you to demonstrate to me that a God exists.
So when I use like the design argument, which I just did, then it's on you to respond to that. You can't simply say.
You're just making a claim.
I'm making an argument. I'm making an argument.
It can't be because it's so complicated. What you are saying to me, right? It's all so complicated. We cannot understand it. Therefore, God.
I never said we can't understand it.
Therefore, God.
No. I never said we can't understand it.
No, but that's it.
I actually said the opposite.
Okay.
Wait, 1 second. What I basically said. Let me repeat the argument, right? And I think this is why it's important to even look into what Darwin said about this, because Darwin didn't even see.
Science has moved on since Darwin. Okay, right? We know that.
Yeah, of course it has. Now, Darwin didn't see his theory as necessarily atheistic, and that's again a common misconception that people.
It doesn't matter if you. It's a fact that we can demonstrate.
It does matter, because if Darwin believes his theory is not atheistic, but you're describing it in an atheistic way, there's a problem.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Science. We can demonstrate that evolution is to the best of our understanding of that. We can demonstrate that evolution exists. It's true, right? It's the best model we have.
But we're talking about God's existence, and you
are talking about so.
No, what you're doing is you're explaining evolution in an atheistic way as an answer as an answer to my design argument. And what I'm trying to show you is even Darwin would not have agreed with you.
But it's the only way we can.
No, Darwin would have said what Elliot Sober
and Darwin would have said. He's dead. So let's leave him out of the equation.
No, but we have look. Right? What Darwin would have said, or what Elliot Sober and these philosophers of biology say, is that if you're going to use this as an argument for atheism or theism, then come up with something which is non-scientific, a rational argument for either case, rather than just hand-waving and saying evolution, atheism, therefore there's no God.
Can I ask one intervention?
Sure. Intervention.
Do you believe that all of those children and adults in Africa dying from malaria at such high rates over time, one of the biggest killers ever, is that good or bad in your moral code?
We believe any form of human suffering is bad, but we believe that life is a test. So there's good that happens to everyone, there's bad that happens to everyone. but
let's
it is
keep
part of God's
with
plan.
Good or bad, because you're a bit binary on your morality. So you believe it's bad that all of those babies dying from malaria in Africa?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. However, that is the will of Allah.
Yeah.
Are you saying the will of Allah is bad?
No, I'm not saying the will of Allah said that.
just kind of
No.
seems-
Okay, so I'll give you an example.
Hang on.
Wait,
Why Allah? Why not?
Okay, no, but it's
But
one second.
Why not?
It could be the Abrahamic God, which covers all three. Which
Broadens the issue, which is
Look,
unnecessary.
look. If you say the Abrahamic God, that is much more broad.
Yahweh.
Okay.
Yahweh. Yeah. Why not?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the origin of that word is. Okay. Now, what we would say is that